Hello guys and girls and everyone else, Caps here with a new video. MOP Prat Warrior, the state of the protection warrior so far. Let's get into it. The first thing we'll discuss today is the state of our cooldowns and defensive abilities. For the first time since Wraith of the Lich King, protection warriors can clearly say that they are on the same level as any other tank when it comes to cooldowns and defensive abilities. It was known for years that protection warriors were lacking a couple of defensive cooldowns when they were compared to other tanks. In addition to this, warriors aggro wasn't always the most stable neither, because of how their rage system worked. And so many times they were even seen as the weakest link for those exact reasons, as cooldown wise other tanks could manage longer and better without any external help from their raid. Thus, the only way a warrior could still stand tall and proud beside a paladin, for example, was if he could truly prove himself to be above the average and always able to find a way to manage any given situation, even if his tools weren't the most appropriate ones. In other words, because of this poor reputation in most progression guilds, the only way a warrior could earn a respectful place in the raid was to show that he truly was a warrior and that fighting and struggling to reach a goal wasn't something that scared him. Oh no, he had to be able to smack every single obstacle right up in the face with his iconic shield slam. And so today I'm even a bit nostalgic to say that the fourth warrior isn't that underdog anymore. It makes me at the same time smile and a bit sad when I reminisce about the time passed in Old War or in TOC with Anubarak, Icehole, Gormok the Impaler. Oh man, that guy knew how to smack the hell out of a warrior. But in MOP these days are over, as Blizzard has finally decided so. Warriors now have 4 additional defensive cooldowns, on top of having a pretty strong active mitigation system and a very controllable self-heal ability. These new abilities on their own are enough to rebalance things and progressively reshape the warrior's reputation, as on bosses like Yosurge or Madness, for example. Thanks to all these new spells, a good warrior will at least perform as well as any other DK or druid out there, because he'll have enough tools to rotate and remain protected at all times, and as much as those other tanking classes. Things are truly gonna depend on the player's performance thus, and less on a class being overpowered or underpowered for a particular fight. Let's analyze these new abilities with a bit more details. For the first time in the game, Prat Warrior have a short time damage reduction cooldown. We have been missing this little but crucial ability for as far as I can remember. I recall being so jealous of my paladin buddy back in Old War on Mimiron Heroic. He could solo tank him without any external cooldown, where I would require up to 2 externals when DPS was slightly low. I simply didn't have enough abilities to manage otherwise. If at that time I had our new demoralizing shout, I know for a fact that this little ability would have simply made the whole difference. A more recent example would be Yosurge Heroic. Every Prat warrior that tried that boss before nerf know for a fact that if you didn't know exactly what you were doing at every moment of the fight, or didn't have an accurate cooldown rotation, you were necessarily gonna be having one of the worst experience a tank could possibly have. In addition of having trinkets like Mirror of Broken Images and Stay of Execution, an additional external cooldown was mandatory for even a very good warrior to be sure he wouldn't die during his last turn cooldown rotation. Whilst a good DK could simply face roll that boss with only half as much effort, simply because he had 2 or 3 extra useful abilities to survive. His Bone Shield spell was one of those extra abilities. In MOP, however, as a warrior we get an equivalent of that spell with our new Demoralizing Shout. So I sure was glad when I saw that blue post in which JC announced the addition of this new ability. It really was something after years of wanting such a spell. Demoralizing Shout is thus one of the greatest additions we'll be seeing in MOP. Okay, next up is the state of our raid utility abilities. Warriors have had some raid utilities in the past, especially with the implementation of Rallying Cry. Safeguard was also a good thing in many cases to use as an external cooldown for another tank or any other in need of that external. It wasn't always usable though, since you needed to intervene to the player's position, and it could also be a bit annoying to have to spec into it, as you personally didn't directly benefit from it. And so people would still prefer a Paladin's Lay on Hands or Hand of Sacrifice or Divine Guardian, etc. over anything we warriors could possibly have to offer. Again, this was another reason for a raid leader to prefer a Paladin over a warrior, for example. It seems, however, that once again Blizzard has realized this, because in MOP we simply get 4 new raid utilities, thanks to our banners and our level 75 talent abilities, making a total of 6 abilities we can use to aid our raid. Sure, they can't all be available at the same time, but we still have the choice to pick them whenever they are needed. So generally I'm really glad with these new additions. Now next up is the state of our active mitigation abilities. Active mitigation is surely the greatest rebalancing system we'll be seeing in MOP. Every tank gets a couple of defensive abilities with no cooldown or a very short one that can be used with their different resources, whether it's rage, runes, etc. One of those abilities is used to solely mitigate melee attacks, while the other is used to protect against unavoidable or magical attacks. This means that once again the warrior finds himself brought on par with the other tanks, as previously we were considered to be slightly weaker against magic damage. We had less cooldowns and less self-heal to deal with those. With the addition of Shield Barrier, however, we find ourselves with one of the strongest magic damage mitigators, as without any cooldown we can literally spam it as long as we have rage, just like the DK can spam his Death Strike as long as he has runes. That Death Strike was another extra useful ability the DK had on your Surge and we didn't. With Shield Barrier thus, we will once again be able to perform just as good as any other tank on those type of fights, without having to struggle any harder. Our melee attack mitigator, Shield Block, is also pretty decent. It allows us to reduce melee swings continuously and smoothly, which protects us from most damage spikes. As a tank, it goes without saying that your main goal will be to reduce incoming damage as much as possible, but you also need to be able to prevent your life from yo-yoing too much by avoiding damage spikes. A balance between reducing damage and avoiding damage spikes will be mandatory thus, and Shield Block happens to be one of the best tools to accomplish this balancing role. Okay, next up is the state of our threat and DPS rotation. Every single Prot warrior has experienced at least once sometime in the past a completely failed pull during which he simply couldn't keep aggro because he was being so much rage starved. In MOP, thanks to the new rage system, we no longer need rage to use any of our main offensive abilities, putting an end to those horrible memories. This also means that our off-tank DPS rotation will be much more fun and virtually the same as if we were actually tanking, since Revenge can now even be used without having to avoid an attack. Recklessness also no longer increases incoming damage, and so we can use it absolutely whenever we want to boost our threat or DPS. And of course, Avatar can also be used for this same purpose, which simply makes us unbeatable when it comes to initial threat generation. Again, I'm really glad of these improvements, as they directly tackle many of the main issues we had in the past and solve them with interesting additions. Let's finish this overview with a quick conclusion. As you could see throughout the video, I'm generally satisfied with what we'll be playing with in this next expansion. I may even have made it sound a bit like if the warrior only had weaknesses before MOP, which isn't true, of course. Through our CDC capping and critical blocks, we were very strong against hard melee hitters like Blackhorn, and thanks to our multiple movement abilities, when there was something to kite, the warrior was sure the guy you'd call. The problem really came when we were facing a continuous flow of unblockable damage, and again Mr. Yosage is the best example here, or even Hagera with her assault, since we had less abilities than other tanks to manage them. Then there was this occasional initial aggro issue if for some annoying reason the boss didn't want to hit you that hard or that much at the pool. And yes, there were many solutions to these problems, but with MOP these issues simply disappear altogether, and so we no longer need to play MacGyver to get the job done. I'm not gonna talk that much about what might still need improvement and a bit of tweaking, as there is not that many things I would want to see change. In fact, a quick improvement in our active mitigation rotation could always be nice, yeah. In order to make it a bit more engaging and less shield block spamming, or a little percentage increase in our ultimatum passive skill, so we can use a bit more often heroic strike and cleave, but that's pretty much it. I would rather hear your thoughts on all of this really. What do you think should still change or simply be added to what we already have? Let me know either in the comment below or on whatever website you are watching this from, as it will sure help develop the discussion. In any case, I hope this here was helpful in some way. Go ahead and hit that like button if you did like it, or subscribe if you like these videos in general. As always, thanks a lot for sticking around, and I hope to see you in the next one.